So welcome everyone. Welcome to Live on ServiceNow with Snyk. My name is Aaron Bennett. I'm Tech Alliances Manager here at ServiceNow, and I'm proud to welcome the Snyk team, plus one of our own, to present to you this community webinar. So Marco Morales, Akila Manigoli, Wendy Snyk, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
I'll start sharing my screen in 1 second.
And go ahead and feel free, Wendy or Akila, to let's talk about the results of our poll.
Wendy, do you want to take that?
Sure thing. Okay, so our first question, what brought everyone to the webinar today? Looks like we have a good balance of our press release, which hopefully everyone did see on the 24th. We issued a great press release that really shows the journey of ServiceNow and Snyk from being a client of Snyk. Now we're partners and investment news as well. So that was very exciting. Looks like our second question, are you leveraging Snyk and ServiceNow today? A good mix of about 15% of the audience leveraging Snyk, 45 leveraging ServiceNow, 9 leveraging both, and 30% neither. So this is a great opportunity for those in either camp to learn more about what we're doing together. You'll see the strengths of ServiceNow, the strengths of Snyk, but of course the better together solution is the real power here. Who will win the big football game? This is kind of sad. 45% said what game? Well, all right, so we got to have some additional enablement here. We have 27% on the Chiefs. I think they have won too much, and I'm a Patriots fan, so I'm sure people will say, don't say that. Patriots have won too much, but we have been looking terrible this year, naturally. The Eagles, 27%. All right, so it looks
pretty
like
even. It's pretty
even. Pretty even on the teams, but the surprising part is the what game. All right, so with
we welcome the disinterested.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves and let's get this thing going.
Sure. I'll lead it. Wendy, why don't you go ahead and since you've been talking.
Excellent. Well, thank you again all for joining. My name is Wendy Snyk. I'm located outside of Boston if my a team affiliation didn't give it away. I'm Alliance Manager here at Snyk, working with our strategic partner ServiceNow and working very closely with Aaron, Akila, and a lot of the other ServiceNow folks. Very happy to be here today. Marco, why don't you go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Marco Morales. I'm a Partner Solutions Architect at Snyk. And I'll be doing the Snyk side of the demonstration. I am from Chicago. I presently live in Philadelphia, so I'm supposed to be rooting for the Eagles.
I'll go next, Marco. Hi, everyone. I'm Akila Manigoli. I'm a Partner Solution Architect, part of Tech Alliance team from ServiceNow. Work closely with Aaron and, of course, on the partnership on Snyk with Wendy and Marco. And I'm from Bay Area.
Okay, so today we're going to be in the next, say, half hour or so, we're going to show you a couple of slides to introduce and give you context. Our goal today is to describe the latest and the new and improved, or however you want to call it, integration Snyk has with ServiceNow. So we'll show you some of those things, and then we'll do some demoing to show you how people use Snyk to provide context. Some of you may not be developers, some of you may be, but it's going to be, here's how a developer uses Snyk, and then how it plugs into ServiceNow. So we have brand new, as of January 24th, we have a new app on the ServiceNow store. We did this over a period of several months. We're really excited. We want to start conveying certain ideas that we're going to hit home a couple of times during this presentation in this demonstration. First is that we're going to help you all, your entire team, track and manage vulnerabilities. So what's happening is with today's DevSecOps teams, sometimes people don't have full visibility. So we want to help your entire team track and manage those vulnerabilities. We also want to give, with this enhanced visibility, the chance for your team to make decisions a little bit faster, which we believe. And we also want to pull on the idea that this is a unified view across your entire team, including your application security team, security professionals, which may have been previously disconnected. This whole idea here is to give everybody a view so that you can all understand the risk of what your vulnerabilities are. And I'll show you a couple of examples of what that means. Let's start introducing Snyk. So Snyk, it's a developer security platform. If you've seen any demonstration or visit our website, you'll see and hear us talk about word developer first. Really what that means is we try to work within the day-to-day workflow from developers. We try to provide all these tools and experiences for their benefit, so they feel very comfortable using our products. We have more than one. We have Snyk code, which is for what people use when they write code. Some people call that SaaS, or software application security testing. That is one of our products. We also have Snyk open source, which is going to be the primary emphasis in this webinar. Open source are the libraries that developers may bring in as they build and create software. We also have other products for Snyk container. This question does come up often. We are not covering that today, but it is for those people who create containers. We have Snyk ISC for infrastructure as code. We have Snyk Cloud for cloud deployed assets. Again, we are going to emphasize Snyk open source and know that people have other questions, but you'll see a lot of the conversation only around this, this solution here. Why Snyk? So this is a why should you care? So we have a bunch of different assets out here, and I am going to speak to a couple of numbers. So Snyk has the world's largest open source library database, and that's pretty cool for us. We have more vulnerabilities in our database than any other company, which we find is really helpful because oftentimes we've learned, and the example here in the middle, that some vulnerabilities hit our database first before anybody else at a pretty good rate. We also offer ideas around how to help your teams work with low false positives. Many of you have seen a phone book, a very large number of vulnerabilities. We're trying to eliminate those as much as possible. And we also want to provide you and your team the right context and guidance so that they know how to solve and address these vulnerabilities. It's one thing to be told you have an issue here. It's another one to be told, here's why it exists. And as a third thing for us to tell you, here is how you fix it. And we'll show you a little bit of that today. Where do we fit in? So this comes up often in terms of where does Snyk fit in? How does it work? I am a security professional. We want to emphasize that we are primarily in the application space. Many of you may be familiar with perimeter or networking defenses. Snyk is not that, and those are great solutions. We have partnerships. We're friends with them. We respect them, but we are primarily around the software application that you and your teams develop. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Akila to give you an overview briefly about ServiceNow.
Thank you, Marco. I was just thinking where to start with ServiceNow, right? I don't know. I'll just start from the beginning. So we have a lot of people on the webinar. I don't know how much you know about ServiceNow. So historically, we know that ServiceNow started as IT ticketing solution, right? But over the past few years, folks have seen just how much more ServiceNow has done and is doing. So the ServiceNow starts with the Now platform and its breadth of capabilities, all of which we can leverage in various industries we serve today. It could be FinServ, it could be healthcare, it could be many other industries, and also the verticals we serve, like the solutions portfolios we serve, like IT service management, IT ops management. It could be security operations, risk, and the latest one to add to our feather is the ESG, the HR service delivery, and so much more. And as we say, ServiceNow helps the world work better. That's what ServiceNow stands for. But as Marco was sharing, in today's presentation, we are going to limit to vulnerability response. So as I was talking about security operation, the vulnerability response module is part of that, the broader SecOps module, which really helps organizations to manage their attack surface management. So when it comes to attack surface management, you might be familiar, there are multiple different kinds of vulnerabilities an organization can be exposed to. There's the infra vulnerabilities, there is cloud vulnerabilities, there is, as Marco was talking about, container. And all of that, the vulnerability response module supports basically by bringing in the data from, integrating with multiple scanners, you bring in the data to ServiceNow platform. And then on top of it, you can add the features part of the vulnerability response module, commingle all that, and which makes the remediations faster for the target teams. But again, just going a level deep within that is application vulnerability response. So which is part of the broader vulnerability response, which focuses mainly on the application vulnerabilities. So within application vulnerabilities, if you were to think, there are multiple different kinds of vulnerabilities. There is SAST, which is a static application testing, security testing, and there's DAST, which is dynamic application security testing, and there's software composition analysis. So with Snyk and ServiceNow integrations, we are going to bring the software composition analysis results found from Snyk platform into the ServiceNow vulnerability response module. And you might be familiar that developers tend to use the open source components in their code, which is a very, very familiar concept. That said, that exposes so much risk, and that the open source components does have multiple vulnerabilities inbuilt into them. And how do we mitigate them? And Snyk is one of the top scanning tools that is known for SCA vulnerabilities. And Snyk integration of Snyk with ServiceNow brings all the data for you in a much handleable fashion within the ServiceNow platform, and makes developers' life really easy. Mark, can you go to next slide? Yes, so I touched base on this already a little bit. As you see, application vulnerability response expands over SaaS, DAST, SCA, pen test, and furthermore, and it could be API security today's day and world, right? So for today's conversation, we'll be focusing on software composition analysis results of integration with Snyk and ServiceNow. Marco, you want to take it from here? You're on mute.
Thank you.
Marco.
I was on mute. Thank you. So today we're going to show you how we cover these aspects here. It is a new app. We're excited. We want to show you how we provide visibility. And let's now start getting into a demonstration of the everyday workflow of a developer and how this gets absorbed and fed into ServiceNow. So if I'm right, this next slide. Oh, again, we're here better together. Infinity loop. This is fantastic stuff. But the part here is we're going to show you Snyk. I'll do that for about 5-10 minutes. And then Akila is going to pick it up with how this information is picked up in ServiceNow. So from here, I'll transition over to a different tab. I'll have more than one tab that I'll navigate into to just give you a feel of the everyday, life cycle of a developer. So first and foremost, I want to just draw attention to a public GitHub repository that Snyk hosts. And we have a number of deliberately vulnerable applications. We have them in different languages. This one happens to be Node. We have Java and other ones, but we provide these as public assets for you and your team to inspect and try out. One thing we do recommend is that you do not run this in a production environment. These are deliberately vulnerable because we run exploits. Today, I'm going to leverage some of these vulnerabilities to just show you how it works and how it looks within Snyk. Next, what I want to do is show you an IDE. I've made the fonts big and high contrast for your benefit, so you can see if you like, small fonts in dark mode. We'll do that at a different time, but for today, we'll just look at it in an easy view. So what I have here is the actual cloned repository. I created a fork and I have it in my environment. And what I want you to appreciate, if you're a developer or not, is we try very hard at Snyk to give the developers an inline experience. If I do this right, all the stuff that I'll show you is going to stay within the IDE. Of course, your developers can go elsewhere. But when your development team is writing their code and using open source, one thing I forgot to mention during the presentation is we've discovered that anywhere between 70 and 90% of the total application payload in modern applications is actually open source. So that means developers may be writing 10 to 30%, but they bring in a lot of open source. And that's where this example comes in. So I'm a Node developer. I have certain files. The file in the middle, which is pack.json, is something most Node developers are familiar with, and they'll say, I know what this means. On the left, what I've already done is I've navigated into the Snyk extension on Visual Studio Code. You may be wondering, do we support others? The answer is yes. We do have IntelliJ and Eclipse, but in my day-to-day, I tend to use Visual Studio Code because it just happens to be of my benefit. If you look at my screen closely, you'll see I have the open source security panel open, but I've closed the code security and the code quality, which are around the other products. Again, want to emphasize one more time, we're only looking at Snyk open source for this ServiceNow integration at this time. So the developer has this information, they're looking at it, and they manage their own work within their life cycles. Maybe they make changes whenever they can, or maybe they use ticketing systems. But the idea that Snyk is trying to support is we will give your development team all the information they need as they're doing the work so they can triage and do the right thing. You'll see the letters like C for critical, H for high. These indicate high and critical severities for vulnerabilities. There is a lot more that we're going to dive into, but these are all signals for your development teams to know, what am I working with? What am I looking at? I've highlighted one, this JSON pointer, because it happens to be a critical. It's like the second one, but I could have done handlebars. The information we have here, you will notice, is going to be available in a variety of formats. Here it's within the IDE. Later, I'll show you the UI on the web application. What we try to do is we try to provide people as much context as possible, including the CVE database entries, which are public assets that contain all this information. Anyone can look at it. This is a way for you, if you're curious or just want to know more, can click into and study them. But at your fingertips here, you have a number of things, like we describe the problem, we tell you what to do. In this case, it's a version upgrade. And you can then choose to operate within your team's workflow, your SDLC, to address this issue. One of the things I do want to show, and your teams will have different ways of using this information if they want to use pull requests and so on. We support all those things. A question that sometimes comes up is, what repositories do we support? We support all popular Git repositories. This happens to be based from GitHub, but Bitbucket and GitLab, those are all equally fine. On-premise or hosted are also good. What I'm going to show you here is some developers do like using the command line. I already have it in my history. I'm going to run a Snyk scan for open source, and it's only going to look at the critical issues. It takes a few seconds. I get my results. This kind of information is useful for those teams, and I'll make this big. This kind of information is useful for those teams who have members who really enjoy or like using the command line. Maybe they use JSON output, or maybe they include this into their build operation for any number of pipelines that we do support. This, again, I hope you can see, helps you see how a developer can do all this work to manage their workload within their IDE environment. They don't have to leave it, and they can do everything as they know and they love. Next, I'll transition over to a more global view, which has the same information in our UI. Snyk is a hosted application. I have, there's organizational structure. We have these things called groups and projects. We really think about it, it's like a nested foldering type of structure. The application I have happens to be forked under my name, and the information we have here is in graphical format and UI, same kind of information that you have at the IDE. Where this helps people is if you and I are working the same team, maybe I don't have my laptop, or maybe I just want to open up a browser, or maybe I'm a leader or someone doing a drive-by, and I just want to visually inspect the status of my teammates' other activities without having to do all the IDE work and other things. This is available for them. Package JSON, if I click into it, is going to give me the same information, but in a more familiar UI-centric way that most people are accustomed to when they use these different tools. I can talk through all the different fields that we use to help your teams prioritize, but really the biggest point here is you can probably start to deduce that much of what we've been doing is around the structure to help developers work, help them collaborate, help them do all this work so that they are best equipped to address software vulnerabilities. AppSec is probably on the side wondering, when can we see, when can we do stuff? And Akhil will show you that in a couple of minutes, but I want to close out with just a few more points. The details I'd like to show you here kind of go along the lines of how we provide the explanation to developers. But one of the things we know it's really important, and it's used in the ServiceNow side of the demo, is that we have a concept of a priority score. What we've learned over time is that sometimes people use one dimension, like a CVSS score, to prioritize. What Snyk has done with his Intel database and other proprietary and open information is we've used information as, does this vulnerability have a known exploit? In this case, the mature exploit. Does this vulnerability have a fix available? You can imagine if there is an exploit that is known and there's a fix that's available, your priority score should get bumped up. The filters on the left help you do some of the right things. So if I were to click on critical to limit to just 3 and see which ones are fixable or whatever the numbers are here, this really helps you and your team figure out, I can solve something very soon. You can see there's nothing that's fixable, but partially fixable is other stuff that we have. Well, again, this part of the demo is, I didn't do this track, but you can see the intention behind it. This is the kind of information we want to have your development team have at their fingertips so they can do the right thing. The last thing I'd like to show is something about dependencies. If you recall on the IDE screen, I had a small list of, I'll make this terminal small, I had a small list of direct dependencies that me and my team listed. You can see there's probably about 30 in this list. If I navigate over into the UI, you'll see that I have over 700. So this is something that's really important for those teams because transitive dependencies are really critical for how we do this. What happens is I use open source software, but the providers of that open source software may use other packages as well, and then you get this lovely tree. When we look at the details behind the vulnerabilities, you'll see that tree spelled out as this brings in another thing, and so on. And that's available to your teams for you to use. In closing, I'd like to just demonstrate that we've done our best so far, and we will continue to try to empower your development teams to address software vulnerabilities as they encounter them and manage it in their own time. Now, Akil is going to show you how we give access to the application security folks in ServiceNow visibility into what's happening. Akil, at this time, I'm going to transition over. I'll stop my share and let you pick it up.
Thank you, Marco. Just a second. I'm just bringing my Oh, okay, there. Alrighty. Thank you, Marco. That was very detailed walkthrough of Snyk platform and how users can look at the vulnerabilities within Snyk platform and the additional features of that, all of that. So the good news is, now we have seen how Snyk scans the application vulnerability and reports it for you and you can go see all the data there. And with this integration, with the SCA integration with Snyk and ServiceNow, we can bring in most of that data back to ServiceNow platform and make it visible for you. And as I was sharing, along with that, we can make use of the application vulnerability features we have, like risk score, risk rating, assignment rules, combined with all of that, which helps you, the security teams and the developers, to prioritize which vulnerabilities they want to be fixing first. Not only that, the post remediation steps can be automated based on the process that you follow, right? All that is feasible and possible on the ServiceNow platform. And I'll just take a step back before I start deep diving into the data I'm showing on my screen. So what are the benefits of using application vulnerability response module itself? You can find and prioritize the application vulnerabilities faster, and we can remediate the vulnerabilities and the visibility across the team. And we can automate the prioritization and risk management using the configurable risk score calculators and rules. And the response activity can be driven much faster and efficient by development teams. And not but not the least, pinpoint development issues proactively. All this is possible just using the application vulnerability features. Now I'm going to show you the data you're seeing already. This is the data we have brought in from the integration. So the integration itself makes use of the OAuth authentication. And once you authenticate, there are import jobs in place. When you run them, that the import jobs bring in the data into the platform. Of course, there's a lot of processing that's happening. All of that is in place, and coalescing and making sure that there's no duplication. All of that is already in place. So once all that happens, the records get created in application vulnerability item table, which is the application vulnerability response. As you see, the source you're already seeing here as Snyk. So I'm going to deep dive into this data a little bit here now. And you see the risk score populated, risk rating, the state, and the remediation target if it's already was set. So let's take a look at one of the AVIT. AVIT is nothing but a unique combination of a vulnerability to an endpoint. That's what an AVIT is. But in application vulnerability, it's a vulnerability existing on a unique application release. So what is the benefit of this integration, right? The Snyk and ServiceNow integration, you will have an ability to bring the projects from Snyk, which you're seeing already here. I'll walk you through that also in a little bit, into ServiceNow platform as application releases and packages and scanned applications. And you'll have an ability to bring issue from Snyk into ServiceNow as vulnerabilities, application vulnerable items, and packages. And you'll have ability to link application release and scan applications using the well-known CI lookup rules that are provided within the platform. And also, additionally, based on how your organization operates, you can also add additional CI lookup rules if need be. And finally, everybody needs, the organizations need the data visualization. So that's already in place, which is a very friendly dashboard, which the remediation teams can utilize really well. So as you see here, I'm going to highlight the application release, and you see the package. And as I said, ABIT is a unique combination of a vulnerability, which is already seen here, which is a CVE with that number on a packet that was found in a Snyk platform. If you were to scroll down a little bit on this record, you would see something called a source link. Source link is a drill down link, which will take you back to the Snyk platform for this particular application vulnerability, if you were seeking additional context. So many times what I've seen is the remediators, or in this case, it's development team or the security team, if they were looking at this vulnerability, if they need additional context, they have to log in back to Snyk platform separately and then start looking for this particular application release and the vulnerability. But here we made it easy for you. Just this link will directly take you to the vulnerability found, where you can get the additional context that you're looking for. Along with that, it also shows you the vulnerability summary and the recommendation. How, as Marco was talking about, Snyk does provide recommendation on many of the vulnerabilities that are found already, how this can be remediated. So all of this data above, and combined with the features of vulnerability response, like calculating risk and risk scores, it will help developers prioritize vulnerabilities at a faster rate. And the assignment rules, you might be seeing here. So there are predefined assignment rule. It manages to assign to a specific assignment group based on the configuration that's already set in place, which is exposed to end user to do that. So along with all of that, you can also drive all these, prioritization based on the CMDB that's already populated with the application release data. So in a nutshell, Snyk SDA data, along with ServiceNow application vulnerability response module, helps developer and the security teams remediate the vulnerabilities at a much faster rate. So with this, Marco, I'll stop sharing and give it back to you.
Thank you. At this time, I don't think we have any more slides to show, but we're happy to show screens if people have questions. I think there are a couple of questions. Wendy, do you have any guidance as to which one we should address first?
Yes, let's start with, in no particular order, I'm just going through ones that we got in the chat that were excellent, I think, for the whole audience to hear. First one being, how do I find the app? Is it free or not? Marco, I can take this, but I did post the link in the Q&A section. Our app is live in the ServiceNow store today. It is free to download. You will need certain entitlements on either the ServiceNow and Snyk side in order to leverage, but the app is in the store today. Just head over to the store. You can type Snyk right into the main navigation search bar and go ahead and download that.
Thank you, Wendy. I'll look at the first question. The Snyk UI provides almost all the details required for vulnerability remediation. What extra does ServiceNow offer? So one of the, and Akila, you can pick it up after I start, but one of the things we've learned in the numerous requests we've had of customers is the ServiceNow user population, application security-minded folks, don't always have visibility onto the day-to-day life of a developer. There is friction. There's a desire of the security folks to say, can I see, can I understand? Do I need to push a tool down onto? There's all these questions around understanding how the developers are managing their issues. What we're doing is we're encouraging developers to address vulnerabilities as much as we can and grant visibility into the ServiceNow population. Akila, if you want to add anything, please go ahead. I wanted to keep it short on purpose.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it, Marco. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you for that.
We got a few coming in, so let's hit all these questions, and then
okay,
we'll see when they slow down.
Yeah, if I understood the uniqueness, won't there be collisions on package names and CVEs across groups or orgs with multiple package names of the same value? So I think, Wendy, I'm going to need your help here. This question does come up. So if the same vulnerability comes up again in the same package, I believe I'm right to say you don't get duplication. But if you have two different packages, two different software applications that have the same dependency, those things do show up separately as two different times. Wendy?
That is correct.
Okay.
You nailed it.
Yeah. How does this work with multiple groups? So there's a lot of language here, and maybe the anonymous attendee can post a follow-up. So groups can mean a lot of things. ServiceNow has probably its own term. Snyk has its own team. Your company may have its own term. And so maybe what I want to hear is a clarification, because we, if multiple groups is I have two different development teams, or multiple groups means like two different groups in Snyk, please help me understand with a little bit of a clarification on that. So I can better answer what do you mean by how does this work with multiple groups? Unless some of the people on the phone or the call have their own perspective. Why do we assign vulnerabilities to a group? Why not group them and assign them in ServiceNow like we do for infrastructure vulnerabilities? Akila, I'd like to lead with your answer first, and then I'll color commentary.
Group, why not group them and assign in ServiceNow like we do? So the assignment group is very similar, Sanjeev. It's the assignment group rules are the broader, it comes on the configuration side. It works very similar to both infra and application vulnerability. So there's not much of a change. So I'm kind of confused with your question. If you were to answer, are there grouping rule functionality? Yes, there are grouping rule functionalities. Yes.
Okay. Snyk also collects dependency license information. Yes, that's right. Is that information pulled into the ServiceNow platform? I see Wendy Swank, my counterpart, is typing an answer, and I'm waiting with bated breath, Wendy, if you can type it in.
Yes, this current integration does not pull in the license data. Okay,
thank you. I see it disappeared too. Are there group, how do we assign, that's a weird ask. So I'm looking at Sanjeev's 11:31 a.m. Eastern question. Are there grouping rule functionalities for application vulnerabilities? Akila, is that yours?
Which one?
This would be the one at 11:31 my time, so it's from Sanjeev.
So I did answer. That's when I asked Sanjeev question, he reposted, so I did answer.
Okay, thank you. How real time are the updates at ServiceNow? So there is a scheduling component, right? There's I'm sorry, there is a batch operation. I don't know the timing. It can be triggered by human. What is the timing on this? Is it
just to add to that? The import jobs can be scheduled daily, or based whatever at different frequencies. But pretty much what I've seen is organizations schedule them daily, and after the daily import jobs are run, the data is refreshed from and it matches with the Snyk platform to ServiceNow at that point.
Okay. Is the 11:32 the anonymous attendee, the multiple Snyk groups comment? Is that a clarification from one of the previous questions? Or is that a new type of question?
I also interpret that as multiple Snyk deployments, possibly, or like differentiated environments where you might want to pull that information into ServiceNow together.
Right. So when we say multiple differentiated Snyk deployments, are we talking about, so what are we talking about? Help me understand, Aaron.
So say, company A has a Snyk deployment and then they acquire company B, now they have two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's something, so how this, the end of the day type of question is depending on how those two organizations get consolidated within Snyk. At a very simple level, Snyk starts with two primary structures. A group can have many organizations. Two different companies are likely to have two different groups. If we combine them, if the two companies get acquired or merge or whatever, how those companies want to maintain their assets is going to be something that affects it. If you have two separate groups, you're not going to combine into the same ServiceNow environment. Is maybe the better one. They'll be in separate locations. Go ahead.
I see a good one we might want to hit on is Snyk UI provides almost all the details required for vulnerability remediation. What extra does ServiceNow offer? Obviously a question for Akila or Aaron.
Yeah, I can add to that. So just to take a step back, it's a great integration way for SCA results to bring in inside ServiceNow. But I'm just looking from an organization from a security perspective. They might be using multiple tools for multiple different application vulnerability scanning. So with this, you can have your SaaS, DAST, and SCA, everything in one platform. That's one way to look at it, right? You can see all the data. As I don't know if you recall, I was showing on my screen, we do have a source field which specifically shows which source the data is coming from. So based on that, you can group your different scanning, imports and then remediate them at once and have a global view of what's happening within your application vulnerability for the given organization. So along with that, from the remediation standpoint, you can always use the additional workflows built into the vulnerability platform itself that can be leveraged to move the remediation faster. Aaron, do you want to add anything here additional that you can think of?
Well, I think the other answer is sort of more, global. It's, having that data in ServiceNow, having the audit capabilities of ServiceNow layered onto the Snyk tool without, causing any kind of conflict or, friction with Snyk users. So we're not taking them out of their environment to, submit issues or do anything. It's all transparent. So that's essentially the biggest, boost that we get, is that these groups can work together without any visible conflict or friction between the two tools. They just continue the regular operations.
Are we at the question from Saurabh? What do I need to have in CMDB for CI rules? I think that's your question, to work efficiently and not end up with unmatched CIs.
It's a great question, Saurabh. And, that's an ongoing struggle for all the organizations, right? So, coming back to CMDB, we need to have the robust CMDB to start with for the CI lookup rules to work. That said, that's the first step. How can we measure the health of the CMDB? I know Aaron can really add in more here. He being working on the different CMDB connectors himself. But that's an ongoing problem and a solution for, it's an ongoing work, I would say, right? How do I keep the health check on for CMDB? And that way I can make use of the CI lookup rules better so that it won't end up in the unmatched CI. So the short answer is to have a good CMDB populated before you start. But as I said, realistically, we have seen that, it's not easy. It's very easier said than done. So it's a lot of work there to have a good CMDB.
Okay. After Saurabh, we had a question at my1136 from an anonymous person. Snyk UI provides almost all the fields. We did answer that question live. And maybe we'll have to back up the video next time to answer it, but I want to keep moving with the questions. Is there any triaging functionality built on the ServiceNow side? For example, marking a finding as a false positive or the ability to ignore a vulnerability, finding it so it doesn't show up as a risk anymore. I'll start the answer. I think the answer is no. We don't have that ability to trigger or change the state of issues in Snyk from ServiceNow, but please, other people, please answer.
No, you're right. The current available features for application vulnerabilities are either you can close or resolve. So those functionalities are available for infra, but not for the application yet.
Yeah, that's more of a function of the nature of the object, because obviously if you've got a different version of an open source repository, it becomes a different entity. So like you replace an object like that, you don't actually patch the open source object. So it's a bit of a different mentality from a typical infrastructure approach. Similar to container vulnerabilities, we don't actually update the container, we replace it with a different.
Right.
Let's make sure we're marking these questions off as we go and we don't miss any. So I saw that there was, were we on triaging functionality? If I'm going down the list of questions, I see a few more. I want to make sure that we hit the automation closure. Obviously, those details are picked up. A lot of the work in ServiceNow, and then going back to the question about what the extra value is. The extra value is that the developer does not have to design a security workflow around their developer activities. They don't have to manage it. Obviously, the security team is more especially focused on those sorts of workflows, and so that's what ServiceNow provides, such as like a deferral process in vulnerability response.
Thank you.
So go ahead, Marco.
Thank you for that. I think what I've seen before is people write effectively to some type of script to automate the importation. So we've done all that work for you and the reconciliation. So this is a few things you don't have to worry about anymore that we're doing so that it is done more automatically.
Yeah, auditing, reporting, visibility, rolling risk up to the greater organization so that you have security results from your infrastructure deployments, your production, and your code and development. Those sorts of things that would be just a headache for a developer become something that the security organization can do in ServiceNow.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into triage. Is there any triaging functionality built in the ServiceNow side? For example, marking a finding false positive or ignoring. We want to take that, Akila?
I think we just answered that one, isn't it,
Yes.
Aaron? Yeah.
Okay. I think we're caught up now.
Thank you. And the last one is Snyk and ITSM integration makes sense, but I'm not sure about the Snyk and VR integration. I'd like to lead with the ServiceNow team.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. ITSM, you would just have the data there, and as Aaron was talking about, you don't have the ability to integrate with the security's workflow, first of all, to start with, right? It doesn't have the remediations, it doesn't have the assignment rules or the risk rating, prioritization. All of that is not feasible within ITSM integration.
I'll say, Akila, it's possible that it makes sense to have an ITSM integration, but then you're talking about a different objective. So
Okay.
if you're talking about fixing something in runtime, like say a service outage or something like that, then yes, obviously we'd want to do that. We want to make sure that we're getting the right data from Snyk and correlating it to the right type of incident for service operations to do something like that. Whereas in this case, we're strictly looking at risk created from security vulnerabilities that are ongoing and possible accepted risk that we have to take into production. And how do we mitigate that risk? That's sort of more the approach of this integration, but that's a good question.
Yeah. For the use case we're discussing here, it fits well into the VR integration.
Right,
I think getting a sense of the questions, Aaron and Akila, Marco, folks on the line, and I think in general, a good observation is that a lot of people are used to the traditional infrastructure scanners, which this is not. I think it might be worth a minute of explanation of the traditional, like the Qualys, Rapid7, those scanners.
Real quick, Wendy, while we talk about this, I wanted to launch the poll because it looks like there's some interest. I don't want to keep people on after the appointed time if they need a break for the next meeting. So especially if you'd like some further answers on these questions, I would encourage you to answer yes to this poll, and we'll reach out and make sure that we can clarify anything. So I'll leave this open while you address that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Aaron. I think just a moment of explaining how this is different than the traditional or classic infrastructure scanner might help the audience as well. Marco and Akila, if you guys want to take that.
Akila, do you want to go first? So, I mean, we could start with infrastructure being, it's the way we understand infrastructure is scanning a live environment. It's focused primarily on running, runtime, hardware, computers, servers,
Right.
maybe virtual infrastructure in a location, not necessarily cloud. It seems that's a different thing oftentimes. Akila, do you want to go into how, this source code analysis takes us forward in the head of that type of world? Yeah.
So, within, attack surface management, I think I spoke a little bit in the beginning of within this talk. So that itself, it's huge, right? The attack surface management is really huge, and it can be divided into multiple different areas. Infra is one area, application vulnerability is another area. And then, we can get into more details of, the SBOMs and the API security. So that's the next up. You can start looking into expand your attack surface management and get a view of that. So within infra, you can have, the infrastructure owned by the organization, which Aaron was talking about, servers, laptop, endpoints, all of that. And it could be a cloud environment. And then you can think of your coming to the cloud and containerization, your containers, and then within application you can think of your how you can get the static security findings and the dynamic security findings, and then the SCA. So there are various components of the vulnerabilities itself. So bringing all that into one place and then having a unified view, I think that really helps the organizations get a bigger picture of where my organization is in terms of vulnerabilities, in short.
All right, let's keep answering these questions as long as people would like to stick around. So we'll stay obviously till the top of the hour if you'd like to. please, if you have somewhere to be or need a break before your next call today, answer yes to that question so that we can follow up with any other items of interest. But let's go on to Anil's question. If I understood correctly, Snyk will scan application repos. How about vulnerabilities in application servers used to run these applications? So I guess how do we want to split this up? Mark, describe the scanning, approach first.
Yeah. So the way I read this question is, we do scan code repositories for sure. And that's its own discussion track. Like, I know the purpose of this webinar is to focus on Snyk, open source within ServiceNow. But yeah, the answer is yes. We do scan repositories, and we do have Snyk Cloud for running infrastructure. I'd like to defer that conversation to a different. I stay focused on the ServiceNow.
Probably out of the scope of this integration. It's possible that could be covered by another existing infrastructure scanner, because we're scanning runtime with an infrastructure scanner. But if that's in, say the cloud, or if that's a running container, it's possible that you've got coverage gap there. Integration. I don't know, Keela, do you have any thoughts on that to add?
No, I think I was looking at Sanjeev's another question here. He says, I noticed. Sorry, that's the one you were saying.
Oh yeah, if you want to answer Sanjeev's, why don't you read it first for the audience? And then,
what Sanjeev says, what I noticed is you assigned a vulnerable item to a group and not a vulnerable task, which we do in infra. Again, Sanjeev, in infra, the approach is slightly different. Given the number of vulnerabilities that you find, it's in millions. So, and just addressing through vulnerable item is a nightmare for the remediation teams. So the feature that's introduced there is you group them as based on the assignment groups. So which is called as remediation task, not vulnerable task in the latest version. So the remediation task is what the remediators will be looking at, but each remediation task contains multiple vulnerable items within that. But coming to application vulnerability, first of all, the numbering is not that huge, and it's definitely doable and maintainable within the vulnerable item itself. And the grouping and remediation is slightly different when it comes to application vulnerabilities. And hence, the assignment group rules are worked on the vulnerable item itself.
Yeah, and it'd probably be interesting to think about what the grouping logic would be, because you've got people working on projects, and like their projects would be potentially installed on thousands of containers or hundreds of machines, or however you look at it. But it's a bit of a different approach because of where we are in the cycle of deploying the app.
In fact, I was thinking it can always go back to the application release. You can tie it to that and tie it to which is in the CMDB, and that way you can map, run down with multiple mapping within the application, drill down who is the owner of that, who is working on that application, things like that. So that can be leveraged here.
And that's what you can sort of use ServiceNow to do as well, as build those reports based on release and start to get a picture of the performance in development.
Yeah.
Let's move to the next one. So Snyk has an integration with Jira. Is ServiceNow a better alternative? Well, I would say our default answer would be, of course.
Yes.
I don't know, Keela, did you want to add any color to that?
Personally, I have not seen that integration, so I would not. I can't comment with the Jira integration. But going back to what I've been saying, the ServiceNow vulnerability response and application vulnerability response will definitely give you a much more unified view of, if you're looking from organization's perspective, any type of application vulnerability you can bring in and have one unified view.
Yeah. One thing I'll add is for the Jira integration, we see them as different solutions. Jira is for one type of population, and the ServiceNow people, please correct me when I'm wrong. We see Jira as a developer friendly. Hey, I want to manage my day-to-day code things. ServiceNow, because it has such a wide breadth of solutions and products. They've solved a lot of other problems that are not addressable, say, by Jira. So I would say ServiceNow is the best alternative for all the problems that ServiceNow is addressing. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and it might be, just to expand it a little bit, the Jira might be more focused on, say, issue management, like, talking about assigning work to developers. Whereas this, we're looking at, a security overview of, the issues that are coming into, coming in through the code while it's in process. We do have a product called Strategic Portfolio Management that is a little bit more similar. So because this integration is not with that solution, it's probably a little bit of apples and oranges.
I see another question here. What is the difference between Snyk and other scanners like Tenable? Please tell us the benefits why we should consider Snyk in addition to Tenable, which we currently. Thank you. As I think Wendy did touch upon the infra vulnerability scanners like Tenable, Qualys, and others in the industry. So Tenable definitely is on. It can be leveraged for IT, OT, and on that side of the vulnerability scanning. Whereas Snyk is developer first platform. Wendy, Marco, please again add more to that. And then with this integration, we can find the software composition analysis specifically into ServiceNow.
No, Snyk, you just want to comment on the Snyk sort of edge when it comes to their approach, Marco and Wendy.
I'll start by saying is they are different types of solutions. Snyk has this scan, code, container, perspective. Tenable is a different one. I'm not at liberty to say like the different distinctions, but in general, we see more complementary than competitive.
Yeah, that's a good way to end that question.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm sorry, I want to add just like another 30 seconds. So like, so we've used different metaphors to describe like security is not just one thing. There's usually a lot of things, and there's different models, the 7-layer or whatever, the sphere model. If I use a simple example, I would say like if you were to go outside and it's very, very cold, you would want warm boots, warm pants, warm jacket, mittens, gloves, and so on. Each of these solutions is their own thing. Maybe we can be greedy and say Snyk is the fantastic jacket, but someone else may be the fantastic mittens. And it's something that we would want you to just understand that like we see Tenable as something that is not really overlapping, with our solution. So dress warmly, especially on Super Bowl Sunday.
Sure.
Just, another point, different end users as well. So a Tenable end user is going to be different than a Snyk end user. We're scanning different things.
Awesome.
Great. Needs of the vulnerability scanning itself.
Well, thanks everyone for the lively Q&A. Really appreciate it. We do have a few more minutes. If anyone would like to, to ask another quick question, we will at this time end that poll. And I'm going to grab those results, and we'll make sure to follow up with anyone who did indicate in the affirmative that they'd like to be contacted for more questions. I think call to action for everyone who's still on the call today. Please go to the store and check out the Snyk integration. It's store.servicenow.com. Search for SNYK. Also, if you search for Snyk in ServiceNow, there's a couple of great, we made an appearance in the journal with that announcement. With our own CIO, Chris Betty, who made some comments on the Snyk integration. It's gotten some really great attention just because of the relationship and obviously the exciting, technology innovations that are going. So we wanted to thank everyone for your interest and for attending today. Marcos, Wendy, I'll leave it with you for any other closing comments you'd like to add.
There's one more question on there. Why is Snyk giving more focus to open source and container, but not with Snyk code? If you're talking within the context of the ServiceNow integration, this first version of this app is primarily focused on the open source. We don't want to convey that the other products are not important, but this integration is about Snyk open source.
And again, like if you want to, I don't know if you indicated that you'd like to be followed up with, but if you'd like to, I think did you Wendy and Marco flash your email before?
I did not.
All right, let's anyways, leave a comment on the webinar page. I don't know, Wendy, if you want me to put your email address on video.
Yep, sure thing. It's just wendy@snyk.io. Pretty easy.
If you have any questions about the roadmap, Wendy is the person to ask. So obviously, if there's interest in this, we'd like to know and continue to iterate on this solution. But we would encourage you to first, go and check out what we do have, because I think it addresses an important question for most organizations. All right. Okay. Well, I think we'll give folks 30 more seconds for another question. Again, on behalf of Marco, Akila, Wendy, we thank you all for attending today. This was a great session. Make sure if if you missed any part of it because you had to catch a call or anything, there will be a recording on the ServiceNow community, and we encourage you to check that out. Check out the integration, check out the blogs and the other articles that have been put out recently. And we look forward to coming back and presenting on the next big thing with Snyk. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.